Hello guys, welcome to my first stream. Hope I'm live. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's showing my screen here, so all right. Well, you guys are gonna have to let me know if you guys can see the book or not. But with all that being said, this is completely new to me, so I have no idea what I'm doing. Um, according to what I'm seeing, I'm live. So, all right. So I'm gonna be covering the. So I'm gonna be covering the Kineticist class here. Okay, good. It is showing my screen. That's fantastic. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good. Okay. So, it's time to talk about the Kineticist. And I think that I'm going to give you guys my first impressions here. Now, I did do a video on the water impulses, so I do know about those. And I have heard about one of the wood impulses, but I've tried my absolute best to avoid spoilers. I was really hoping at least one person would come and be in chat, but I guess not. So let's just get right into this, and maybe I can talk to some of you guys later. Huh. Ah, there we go. There it goes. Okay, my computer is a little bit slow because of all the stuff that's going on. But anyway, so yeah, we knew it was already a Constitution-based class. And 8 plus con, that's the same as the playtest. So 12 hit points per level, basically, at level 1 to 5. Probably 1 to 10, actually. Because you can't go 20 con until level 10. Anyway, trained in perception, expert in fortitude, expert in reflex, trained in will. This is all basically the same as it was in the playtest. Trained in nature, trained in additional skills equal to 3 plus intelligence, and trained in simple weapons, unarmed attacks, light armor, unarmed defense, and Kineticist class DC. Okay. Alright, so it sounds like Kineticist class DC is going to be a part of some of these impulses more than likely. Alright, moving on. So first up, ancestry and background, attribute boost, which are ability boosts now. Yeah. I don't like this. I don't know how I feel about this partial boost thing. But, you know, it is what it is. Initial proficiencies, yeah, that's pretty standard. Okay, kinetic gates. As a kineticist, you've awakened or opened a kinetic gate, a supernatural conduit within your body that can channel elemental forces straight from elemental planes. You can choose either a single gate, 1 element, or a dual gate, 2 elements at first level. Okay. Okay, so it looks like they got rid of the, so far, it looks like they got rid of all of them. When selecting an element for your kinetic gate, you can pick from 6 elements: air, earth, fire, metal, water, and wood. Elements you can channel are referred to as your kinetic elements. Your kinetic elements function even in moments where they normally wouldn't. For example, you could use fire actions underwater even though it's not normally possible, and you could create air in a vacuum. Your kinetic gate gives you impulse feats, magical actions that let you shape and control your elements in awesome ways. You gain more impulse as you gain class feats, as described in impulses. Yeah, okay. Higher levels, the gate's threshold class feature gives you more impulse feats and lets you choose whether to improve one element or access new kinetic element. Okay. So at higher levels, you might be able to get all of them. I'm not sure. Looks like pretty standard stuff. Your kinetic gate links to a single elemental plane, starting you with a single element, but giving you greater power with it. Choose one element to be your kinetic element. Select 2 first-level impulse feats that have that element's traits. In addition, you gain an impulse junction benefit that occurs when you use an impulse of your chosen element that takes 2 actions or more. This happens before the other effects of the impulse unless noted otherwise. You can only gain 1 impulse junction per round. They are described below. Okay, let's look at these. For air, before or after the other effects of the impulse, you can either stride up to half your speed or step. If you have a fly speed, you can fly up to half your speed instead. Okay, that is pretty cool, actually. That gives you huge mobility. Earth, fragments of stone float around you, granting you a +1 circumstance bonus to AC until the start of your next turn. Fire, increase the damage die size of fire damage dealt by the impulse by 1 step. Metal, use electricity, acid, or piercing. Until the start of your next turn, each time a creature touches you or damages you with an unarmed melee attack or non-reach melee weapon. Sorry about that. It takes damage of your chosen type equal to half your level. Minimum 1 damage. Okay. So you get a lot more damage with fire and a little more damage with metal. Okay. Water. After the impulse's other effects, you can move 1 creature targeted by the impulse or in its area 5 feet in any direction, or 10 feet if it's in a body of water. You can't move the creature into the air. You can choose only a creature that's willing to be moved, that failed its save against the impulse, or you succeeded at an impulse against attack roll against the target. I assume that's what it says. And for wood, you gain temporary hit points equal to your level that lasts until the start of your next turn. Okay. Cool. So it's looking to me like air is amazing. Water is pretty good in certain situations. Earth is decent for defense. And so is wood. Fire and metal are just extra damage, though. That's the thing. But metal does give the enemies an incentive not to attack you, which is handy. All right, now for dual gate, your kinetic gate is a harmonious conduit between two planes, allowing you to combine their elements to give you a versatile set of abilities. Select two elements to be your kinetic elements. Then select two first level impulse feats, one with the trait of the first element and one with the trait of the other. Okay. So either way, you get... Now my question is, you get two impulse feats, but do you get a regular feat? But do you get a regular kinesis feat as well? That's the thing I'm wondering. Kinetic aura. Through your kinetic gate, elements flow from an elemental plane to orbit your person. Form and appearance of this kinetic aura are unique to you. Examples include chaotic wind orbiting your body, fragments of floating gravel, colorful wicks of flame, stars of raw metal and always changing shape, floating snowflakes, or splinters dancing in the air. You can channel more than one element. Pieces of all your kinetic elements appear in the aura. Okay. You gain the channel elements action. This lets you activate your kinetic aura. Channel elements. Okay, it's an aura, and your kinetic gate isn't active. Okay. You tap into your kinetic gate to make elements flow around you. Your kinetic aura activates as part of this action. As part of this action, you can use a one-action elemental blast or a one-action stance impulse. So they're stance impulses. That's pretty cool. Your kinetic aura is a 10-foot emanation where pieces of your kinetic element or all your kinetic elements, if you channel more than one, flow around you. Your kinetic aura can't damage anything or affect the environment unless you have another ability that allows it to. Okay, so basically, it allows you to use your impulses, but it doesn't do anything else unless the impulse actually says it affects something. Channel elements has the traits of all your kinetic elements. Your kinetic aura automatically deactivates if you're knocked out. You use an impulse with the overflow trait, or you dismiss the aura. So you can dismiss it, okay. So you can't use new impulses while your kinetic aura is deactivated. Ones you already used remain. And you can still sustain any effect that can be sustained. Stance impulses are linked to your kinetic aura and end when the aura deactivates. Okay. All right, now I want to check something. Class feats. No, it actually hasn't said anything about class feats. Okay. Impulses. An impulse is a special type of magical action available to kineticists, allowing them to wield or shape their element into diverse and powerful forms. To wield an element, you must have your kinetic aura active and a free hand, as described in the impulse trait. See the key? Okay, so that's where it goes into that. You automatically gain the elemental blast and base kinesis impulses, and your kinetic gate selection gives you additional impulse feats. You can select more impulse feats with the Kineticist class feats, and at higher levels, you'll automatically get more with the gate's threshold class feature. You can select an impulse feat only if it matches one of your kinetic elements. Makes sense. Impulses are magical, though they aren't spells. Some things, and though they aren't spells, some things that affect spells also affect impulses. Okay. Abilities that restrict you from casting spells, such as being polymorphed into a battle form, or protect against spells, such as spells that protect against other spells or creatures' bonus to saves against spells, also apply to impulses. Okay, so unfortunately, there is no druid transform into a bear and still wield the elements. That's unfortunate. All right, before we continue, let's take a look at these key traits. Composite. A composite impulse combines multiple elements. You can gain an impulse with the composite trait only if your kinetic elements include all the elements listed in the impulse traits. The primary magical the primary magical actions kineticists use are called impulses. You can use an impulse only if your kinetic aura is active and channeling that element, and only if you have a hand free to shape the elemental flow. The impulse trait means the action has a concentrate trait unless another ability changes this. If the impulse allows you to choose an element, you can choose any element you're channeling, and the impulse gains that element's trait. For an infusion, actions with the infusion trait tweak your kineticist impulses. You must use an infusion action to directly before the impulse action you want to alter. If you use any action, including free actions and reactions, other than the impulse action directly after, you waste the benefits of the infusion action. Any additional effects added by the infusion action are part of the impulse's effect, not the infusion action itself. Powerful impulses temporarily overdraw the energy of your kinetic gates. When you use an impulse that has the overflow trait, your kinetic aura deactivates until you revitalize it, typically with channel elements. Extinguishing your element this way is severely taxing, and consequently you can only use one overflow impulse per round, even if you reactivate your kinetic gate. Okay. And we know what a stance is. Yeah. Impulse levels. Any impulses you use are the same level you are. For instance, if you're 5th level, your elemental blast would be 5th level, and its counteract level would be 3rd rank, even though you gained the action at 1st level. Yeah. Similar to spells, many impulses get more powerful as you increase in level. In these cases, the impulse ends with one or more level entries. This entry lists the levels at which the impulse gets an upgrade or has an entry with a plus sign that describes the benefit increases on a regular basis. For example, a 1st level impulse with the level +4 entry would get stronger in 5th, 9th, 13th, and 17th levels. Makes sense. Pretty standard. An impulse that requires a saving throw uses your Kineticist class DC. Some of your impulses require you to attempt an impulse attack roll to see how effective they are. Your impulse attack roll uses the same proficiency and attribute modifier as your Kineticist class DC. Like a spell attack modifier, your impulse attack modifier uses the following formula: D20 roll plus attribute modifier, which is going to be con, plus proficiency bonus, plus other penalties. This means your impulse attack roll is typically 10 lower than your class DC. The drain condition can reduce your impulse attack rolls and class DC. Well, yeah, it decreases your con, so of course it does. You can acquire a gain attunator to gain bonuses advantage to your impulse attack modifier. Interesting. They've actually given it an item. They're actually giving the Kineticist an item bonus to their impulses, which is like their elemental blast. At least the ones that use their attack modifier anyway, which is nice. I like that a lot, actually. That makes me think that spellcasters are going to get something like that too. But we'll see. I don't know. Okay, Elemental Blast. This is the main thing. Elemental Blast is the Elemental Blast impulse is a simple expression of power, allowing you to attack with the pure matter of your kinetic elements. Though each element has its own strengths and weaknesses, the basic principle of using them all are the same. You customize the appearance of your elemental blast and can even choose a different form each time you use the impulse. With the wave of your hand, you collect elemental matter from your aura and swing or hurl it. Choose one of your kinetics elements and a damage type listed for that element, then make a melee or ranged impulse attack against the AC of the creature. Okay. Add your strength modifier to damage for a melee elemental blast. If you make a 2-action elemental blast, you gain a status bonus to the damage roll equal to your constitution modifier. Oh, so if you do a 2-action elemental blast, you get strength and con, which is amazing. Yeah. The element determines the damage die, the damage type, and the range for a ranged blast. The damage type other than a physical damage type as its trait to the blast. Air is 1d6 electricity or slashing at 60. Wow. Earth is 1d8 bludgeoning or piercing, 30. Fire is 1d6 fire, 60. Metal is 1d8 piercing or slashing, 30. Water is 1d8 bludgeoning or cold, 30. And wood is 1d8 bludgeoning or vitality, 30. Wait, vitality damn? Oh, wait, that must be... That means wood can use other elemental blast to heal, I'm guessing. I'm not 100% sure on that, though, but... It makes sense for wood that would be able to. On a critical success, the target takes double damage. On a success, the target takes full damage. Level +4. The damage increases by 1 die. Okay. So, Kinetic Blast goes up every 4 levels. Yeah. Okay, that's pretty... Yeah, that's pretty... That means 2 class feats. Yeah. That's pretty standard. Base Kinesis. It lets you perform simple alterations to an element. Okay. It's trivial for you to create some of your element or alter a portion of it that already exists. Choose one of your kinetic elements to affect. This impulse has a range of 30 feet, and the bulk of the target must be negligible or light. Okay. The GM determines what bulk the element is. You can affect an element that's magical, secured in place, or unattended by a creature unwilling to let you. Okay. So, in other words, you can't use this to, like, affect an enemy's fireball, or like a stone mortar to a wall, as the example they give here, or like if you're a metal kineticist, you can't affect their metal weapon. Okay, that makes sense a lot. Yeah. Choose one of the following options, though the GM might allow you to make similar small alterations. Base kinesis can't deal damage or cause conditions unless otherwise noted. Okay. Generate. You bring an ordinary non-magical piece of the chosen element from its elemental plane. The element can be used for any of its normal uses. For example, air can be breathed by an air-breathing creature, and fire can cast light and ignite flammable substances. Move an existing piece of the element up to 20 feet in any direction. If you bring it to your space, you can catch it in an open hand. You can sustain the impulse to keep moving the element. All right. Suppress. You destroy an existing piece of the element, such as snuffing out a flame or evaporating water from a cup. This affects only natural forms of the element, not durable crafted goods like stone, statue, metal lock, or wooden floor. Okay. So, like, you could destroy a tree if you're a wood could. And every 4 levels, it increases by the range increases by 15 feet, and the maximum bulk increases by 1. Allowing 1 bulk at 5th level. Okay. So it looks like you get the 2 impulse feats and then another kineticist feat at level 1. That's what it's sounding like, which is crazy. Skill feats is pretty standard. Extract element. Creatures with a strong tie to your element might be troublesome for you to deal with until you at least learn to turn the elemental nature to your advantage. You gain the extract element action. All right, this is another impulse. This is at 3rd level. Okay. You extract elemental matter from a creature's body and weaken it and take its power for your own. Target a creature within 30 feet that has a trait that matching one of your kinetic elements or is made of one of your kinetic elements. The target takes 2d4 damage with no damage type and becomes susceptible to your impulses depending on its fortitude save against your class DC. Okay. On a critical success, nothing happens, of course. On a success, they take half damage, and you add some of its elemental matter to your kinetic aura. Your impulses bypass any immunity the creature has to their elemental trait, and takes a -1, and the target takes a -1 circumstance penalty to its saves and AC against your impulses. If the target normally has resistance that would apply to the damage from one of your impulse, ignore that resistance. If it would normally be immune to that damage type, instead has resistance equal to its level to damage from the impulse. You can't target a creature with extract element if your elemental matter you extracted is already in your kinetic aura. These effects last for 5 minutes or until your kinetic aura ends, whichever comes first. Wow, 5 minutes. Why would you need... You can't use it on a creature if you've already used it on it, but I mean, it lasts for 5 minutes. Why the heck would you ever need... That's a little much. I mean, most fights only take... Wait, let me read this again. Let me just... Your impulses bypass any... Okay. Yeah, I think 5 minutes is a little much. But, I mean, it is 2d4, and then 1d4 for every 2 levels. Okay. Yeah. All right. This is so that you can actually fight things that would be resistant or immune to your elements. Yeah. It would suck if they didn't have a feature for that. But yeah, that's what you get at third. Okay, so you're gonna have to deal with not being able to hit creatures of your element with your elemental blasts, but at least you get something at third level to combat that. Yeah, okay. General feats, pretty standard. Skill increase, pretty standard. Will expertise. That's what I thought. Will saves to expert. Ancestry feats, pretty standard. Gates threshold. You read a new milestone in your Odyssey to become in tune with your kinetic gate and must decide how to expand the gate's power. At 5th level and every 4 levels after, you choose to either expand the portal or fork the path. Ooh, sorry. Expand the portal. Your gates attunes more precisely to one of your elements. Gain an impulse feat of your level or lower for one of your kinetic elements. If you have more than one element, you can choose a composite impulse, which I'm sure we'll get to eventually. You also gain a gate junction for one of your kinetic elements. If you have no valid options for the feat, typically because you have one kinetic element and devoted your class feats to taking that element's impulses, you can instead select any kineticist feat of your level or lower for which you meet the prerequisites. Okay. So it sounds like there's going to be kineticist feats and then there's going to be impulse feats. Okay. Fork the path. Your gate reaches another elemental plane. Add a new element of your choice to the kinetic elements. Gain an impulse feat of your level or lower with the trait of that element. You can't select a composite impulse feat with this feat selection. Okay. All right, so it looks like the way they've done it is instead of giving you all the elements at once, they let you pick more elements as you level up. Which means Avatar the Airbender is 100% a legal character, which is awesome. When you gain, gate junctions. When you gain a gate junction, you develop a specialized kinetic technique. Choose one benefit from the gate junction table for one of your kinetic elements. A critical blast junction happens when you get a critical hit with an elemental blast of your kinetic element. An elemental resistance grants you resistance to the to damage while your kinetic aura is active. This resistance is equal to half your level, and it applies to damage of any listed type that comes from a creature or effect that has any of the listed traits. At 17th level, you gain immunity to effects with the listed traits. This doesn't make you immune to creatures with such a trait. You can voluntarily forego this resistance, immunity, or both if you want an effect to work on you. You can choose an impulse junction instead of one of the listed junctions. Impulse junctions are listed under single gate on page 14. Okay. A skill junction makes you trained in listed skill and grants you the listed skill feat. If you were already trained in the listed skill, you instead become trained in a skill of your choice. While your kinetic aura is active, you gain a +1 status bonus to the listed skill, and the bonus increases to +2 at 10th level and +3 at 13th level. Okay. So it sounds like the Kineticist can be a freaking skill monkey if you want it to be. That's crazy. You can select each gate junction only one. Oh, okay, never mind. Unless noted otherwise. But you can have the same type of junction for multiple elements. You can always choose not to use a gate junction when it would normally occur. If you have multiple junctions that would apply at the same time, such as kinetic aura junctions for different elements, you can apply any number of them. Though note that you can only use one impulse junction per round. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Gotta get the... Gotta hydrate, right? Because we got a long ways to go. So, first we've got gate junctions. Okay, so the critical blasts are basically critical specialization effects. Okay. So, for air, it puts the target up to 10 feet. You can gain resistance to air and electricity. And area junction, aura junction, you and the ally that start... You and any ally that starts its turn in the aura get a +10 foot status bonus to land speed until the end of that turn, and to fly speed if actable. And the skill junction is stealth and experience smuggler. Okay. For Earth, critical blast. If the target is on the ground, it's knocked prone. If it isn't on the ground, it descends up to 20 feet. You choose the distance. Earth isn't bad. The Earth critical blast isn't bad at all. Yeah, make them prone if you crit. Yeah, that's awesome. Elemental resistance, earth and poison. Okay. Aura junction. Squares in the aura are difficult terrain for your enemies, but only if moving into the square would make the enemy further away from you. That sounds amazing for a melee kineticist. Make it harder for them to move away from you. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Skill junctions, athletics, and hefty hauler. Okay. Fire. The target takes for a critical blast. The target takes 1d6 persistent fire damage. You gain an item bonus to persistent damage equal to your item bonus to impulse attack rolls, such as from a gate attunator. Okay. Cool. And you can gain resistance to cold and fire. Aura junction. Enemies in your kinetic aura gain weakness to fire from your fire impulses. This weakness is equal to half your level. Okay, that's pretty cool. Make everyone weak to... Oh, wow. Make all your enemies weak to fire. Yeah. That's insane, actually. And intimidation and intimidating glare. I can already see some really cool builds just from the ones I've seen so far. Okay, metal gate junctions. Critical blast. The target takes 1d6 persistent bleed damage. If the creature has the metal trait or is made of metal, it instead takes 1d6 persistent damage with no type from rust. You gain an item bonus to this persistent damage equal to your item bonus to impulse attack rolls. Okay. And elemental resistance is electricity and metal. Aura junction. Your enemies in the aura take a -1 status penalty to attack rolls with metal objects. And they take a -1 penalty to AC if they're wearing metal armor, have the metal trait, or are made of metal. Again, that's awesome. And crafting and quick repair. Okay. Now let's look at water. Critical blast. The blast deals 2 splash damage per damage die of the blast with the same damage type. Okay, that's okay. Not great. It's just extra damage. You can gain resistance to fire and water. Makes sense. Aura junction. The aura becomes saturated with humidity and water moves as you please. Non-magical fires in the aura are extinguished, and creatures in the aura gain fire resistance equal to half their level. Okay, the aura junction is pretty good. It's looking like the aura junctions are going to be the best ones. Yeah. And skill junctions, athletics, and underwater marauder. And then we've got wood. For critical blast, if the target of the critical hit is adjacent to a surface, roots entangle it. The target is immobilized and must spend an interact action to attempt a DC 10 athletics check to pull itself free. The target doesn't become stuck if its incorporeal is liquid or could otherwise escape without effort. Okay. That's pretty good too. I like that a lot. Elemental resistance is poison and wood. But yeah, just being able to entangle it and make it immobilize if you crit. And the best part is there's no saving throw against it either. You just have to. And this is basically if you crit, it's guaranteed one action. It's almost guaranteed they have to spend one action on their turn to get out, which is awesome. Aura junction. Life-giving blossoms spring up around you. Any ally that begins its turn in the aura gains 1 temporary hit point that lasts until the start of its next turn. This increases to 2 temporary hit points if you're at 10th level or higher, and 3 temporary hit points if you're 15th level or higher. Okay, so that's a little bit of temporary hit points. It's okay. It's not great. And skill junction is survival and terrain expertise. Oh yeah, it depends on the element. That's right, doesn't it? "10-foot emanation." Okay. There it is. Okay, so it's a 10-foot emanation. Hopefully there's like a feat or something that increases that. Because that would be amazing. Anyway, let's move on to kinetic durability. Okay, that's 42 saves to master. Basic stuff. Kinetic expertise. Class DC to expert. Okay. Perception for expert in 9th level. Kinetic quickness. Reflex saves to master. Okay. Reflow elements at level 11. You twist one of your implements you've learned into a different but still similar magic. When you make your daily preparations, you can replace one of your impulse feats with an impulse feat that has the same elemental traits. You can reflow only impulse feats that have exactly one elemental trait, not composite impulse trait feats or feats that vary by element. This follows the same rules as retraining. Okay. You replace impulse feats gained through class feats or through class features that grant you impulse feats. Okay, so this basically lets you change stuff around as you level up, which is I understand why that's at level 11. Weapon expertise, expert in simple weapons and unarmed attacks. Okay. Light armor expertise, that's expert in armor. Okay. That's a list of all the feats. That's all the basic feats. Okay. Yeah, that's expert in armor. Weapon specialization, we know that's pretty standard. Greater kinetic durability. Okay, fortitude to master. Fortitude to legendary. Okay. Kinetic mastery. Kineticist class DC to master. Okay. Double reflow. You can choose 2 elements with reflow elements. Okay. You choose 2 feats instead of 1. Final gates. Your kinetic gate reaches a perfect form and its power is constantly fighting to be released. If your kinetic aura is inactive, you automatically use the first action of your turn to channel elements as a free action. That's handy. You can deliberately suppress the effect. If you're unable to act, Final Gate still functions, but you don't get to use elemental blast or stance impulses you normally do from using channel elements. Okay, so this is basically an action economy thing, and yeah, and then they actually do get legendary in. Is this the only class in the game that gets legendary in their class DC? I think so. This means they're even better at Ranger than class DC. At class DC. Oh my god. I'm pretty sure this is the only class in the game now that gets legendary in class DC. That's crazy. Even Ranger only gets Master. That is nuts. Your skill with light armor improves, and of course, light armor mastery is master in armor. That makes sense. Jeez. Okay, Kineticist feats. Elemental impulses. When you gain a Kineticist feat, you can either select one of the feats available to all Kineticists, or an impulse feat for one of your kinetic elements. You can choose a composite impulse if you can channel all kinetic elements it requires. Okay. So let's take Elemental Familiar. Okay, this is, yeah. That's what I thought. It's basically just, it's like Alchemical Familiar, except it uses your con modifier to determine all of its stuff. And yeah, the elemental familiar you can change it to different elements when you make your daily preparations. Otherwise it probably works the same as any other familiar. Okay. Extended kinesis. Okay, requires base kinesis, but that's a level 1 feature, so. Add the following options to base kinesis. Proliferate. You can cause an existing element to expand. This works like the generate option, except you can either create an equal quantity of the elements in the same square as its source, or in an adjacent square, or cause the element to expand to fill its square, making a flame bigger or turning a twig into a small tree, for example. After you proliferate an element, it reacts to the environment naturally. Water you proliferated into thin air would splash down, for example. This only affects natural forms of the element, not durable crafted goods. Okay. Regulate. You can change the temperature of an existing element, making it colder or warmer. This can snuff out a flame or turn water into ice or steam. After this change, the element cools or warms naturally unless you sustain the impulse. An item that gets cold or hot enough, as determined by the GM, can be used as an improvised weapon that deals 1 cold damage or 1 fire damage, in addition to the damage the GM determines for the improvised weapon. Huh. So basically, you can do a little bit more. You can give like a weapon, say, like an improvised weapon, cold or fire damage if the enemy's weak to that, which is great. Yeah, that's actually really useful in some situations. Sculpt. Reshape an existing element into a small object of the design you choose. It looks crude and artificial on close examination. The sculpted element can be shaped into a functional short tool or a long tool if your base kinesis can affect 1 bulk or greater. It's too fragile and artificial to be used as a weapon or have any monetary value. This could be interesting. We'll have to see how people use this. Could be interesting, though. Versatile Blast. Okay, they did talk about this during one of the streams earlier. Add the following damage types to those you can choose for elemental blast of that element: air cold, earth poison, fire cold, metal electricity, water acid, wood poison. Okay. All right. So this just lets you do more damage. This just lets you do different types of damage with the same elements. That's handy. Weapon infusion. Okay, this is another one I've heard of, but I don't know how it works. With a signature flare, you shape blasts of elemental power into the form of a weapon, such as a sword made of whirling wind or a bow that shoots flames. If your next action is an elemental blast, choose a weapon shape for it to take. You can choose to change the blast damage to bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing, whichever suits the weapon's shape. You can choose other alterations depending on whether you make a melee or ranged blast. And for melee, add one of the following traits: agile, backswing, force, reach, or sweep. Range. Choose one of the following options: range increment 100 feet and the volley 30 feet trait. Range increment 50 feet and the propulsive trait, or range 20 feet and the thrown trait. Okay. So weapon infusion sounds like if they're like immune to your element, then you can basically make it so that your element does damage that a weapon would normally do, which honestly is pretty cool. And you can make the range more, or give them, you can even give it the freaking agile trait. Awesome. So far, the ones I like for level 1 are Extended Kinesis, Versatile Blast, and Weapon Infusion. The Familiar is okay, but it's kind of like Kinetic Activation. Rather than incantations or gestures, you can use your Kinetic Gate to directly unlock the potential of elementally empowered magic items. You can activate magic items that require you to be able to cast a spell, provided you activate them to cast a spell with the same trait as one of your kinetic elements. For example, if you channel fire, you could activate a scroll of Fireball. For any effects of these items that use a spell attack roll or a spell DC, you can substitute your impulse attack roll or class DC. Okay. So this allows Fire Kineticists to use, say, Staff of Fire, but only to cast fire spells. You can also prepare a staff that has at least one spell with the appropriate trait, using half your level rounded up, to determine the number of charges you add. This doesn't allow you to cast spells without the trait of one of your kinetic elements, and you don't gain the benefits of prepared or spontaneous spells spellcasters do. Okay, so basically, all right, so you can. So if you find a staff of Fireball, you can use it, and you can make a staff with the appropriate trait. Yeah, okay. Cool. And you can prepare that staff. Voices of Elements. You can speak with secret tones of elements you channel, finding words in crackles of flame, grinding of stone, etc. Your kinetic aura grants you 3 benefits while active. You speak all languages of your kinetic elements. Okay. You can communicate with mindless elementals on a basic level if they have a trait that matches one of your kinetic elements or is made of one of those elements. This allows you to use diplomacy to make an impression on them and to make very simple requests. You also gain a +2 circumstance bonus to charisma-based skill checks you attempt against elementals of one of your kinetic elements. Okay. The second level feats aren't that great, to be honest with you. I mean, I just don't think you're... It is pretty cool to be able to cast spells from magic items if they're your elements. That's pretty cool. And Voice of Elements is good for out of combat, but yeah. I think for most of my team work builds, I'm going to stick with first level feats. Anyway, moving on. The 4th level, Command Elemental. You grasp the animating force within an elemental creature and bend it to your will. Choose a trait matching one of your kinetic elements and target an elemental creature within 30 feet that has the chosen trait. The element becomes controlled by you if its level is equal to or lower than your level -3, or slowed 1 for as long as you sustain the effect if its level is equal to your level -2 or higher. You can attempt a will save against your class DC to resist being controlled by you or to end the slowed effects. The target is already under someone else's control. It can't be slowed by this ability. The controlling creature also rolls a saving throw, with the elemental using the better results. On a critical success, the target is unaffected and is immune for 24 hours. On a success, they're unaffected. On a failure, the elemental creature is controlled or slowed as long as you sustain the impulse up to 1 minute. This ends if you or an ally attacks the elemental. A critical failure as failure, but you can sustain the impulse up to 1 hour. Wow. That's actually pretty situational. It's safe elements. Elements are wild and dangerous, but you found a way to reduce their risk. You channel energy or use a stance impulse that affects your kinetic aura. You can designate a number of creatures up to your Constitution modifier, which is going to be 4 by this. Choose whether they're immune to the benefits of your kinetic aura or immune to its damage and drawbacks. Huh. If you don't have to be able to see the creature to designate it, nor does it need to be in your kinetic aura, but you can't designate a creature that's unnoticed by you. In addition, you gain the pacifying infusion action. If your next action is an impulse, it gains the non-lethal traits. If it has an area, you can exclude creatures you've designated with safe elements from its effects. Okay, this is an awesome feat. I'm sure a lot of infusions are gonna have areas that you might want to like avoid your allies with. So this is pretty cool. Okay, 6th level. Counter elements. Exactly 1 kinetic element. Okay. This is for the 1 element kineticists. Alright. You're targeted by or in the area of an effect that has the trait matching your kinetic element and originate from an enemy or hazard. Your absolute dedication to a single element that you attempt to gain control over it, even when the element is in service to another entity. You attempt to counteract the effect using your Kineticist class DC -10 as your counteract check modifier, and half this impulse's level rounded up as the counteract rank. If you counteract the effect, you protect only yourself unless you get a critical success on your counteract check. And at 12th level, if you successfully counteract the effect, you can have it target or affect a different creature within 30 feet of you. If you got a critical success on the counteract check, you can choose the effect's target or the effect's targets or the entire area. This is actually pretty cool. Oh, you're facing you're a fire kineticist and you're facing a dragon that breathes fire. Oh, guess what? I counter that. That's freaking cool. I like that a lot. But you do have to specialize in 1 kinetic element to use that. Which means it's not great. Here's some familiar. You have to have a familiar, okay. Your elemental familiar trades places with an element from its elemental plane. Summon a creature that has the elemental trait and whose level is no greater than your level -4. This creature appears in the same space as your familiar, which disappears for the duration of this impulse. You can sustain this impulse up to 1 minute. When the impulse ends, the familiar appears in the same space the summoned elemental occupied. A familiar can endure this process only so often. If you use this impulse on your familiar more than once per day, it dies as soon as it returns the second time. That's not even overflow. Oh my god, that's not even overflow. So basically, once per day, maybe twice per day if you're really in a pinch, your familiar can turn into an elemental of its elements. That is freaking cool as heck. I like that a lot. There's probably quite a few elementals you'd want to use with this. Yeah, I do feel like this is something I would use in certain belts. Moving on to 2-element infusion. Okay, this one is for the dual gates. Kineticists. Climbing one element into another, you combine their strengths. If your next action you use as an elemental blast, choose 2 of your kinetic elements instead of 1. The blast gains the trait of both elements and uses the highest range and damage dice among the 2 elements. Half the blast damage is the damage type of one element, the other half is the other elements. If the total damage is an odd number, you choose which element deals the higher damage. Determining the damage amounts before altering the amount due to halving, doubling resistances, weaknesses, and other calculations. If either element can deal more than one type of damage, you can still choose which damage type to use. You gain any additional effects of both elements, such as their critical blast junction effect. This is cool too. Yeah. That means if... I wonder if this means that you can hit... Like, if a creature has 2 weaknesses, can you hit both of them with it? I think you can. It's crazy. And they get both critical junction, and they both get their added effects. So if you crit, you get both critical blast junction, which is awesome. Yeah, I like this one a lot too. Yeah. Okay, elemental overlap. Okay, again, this is for the primary gate. So you've dedicated yourself to one element, you learn to mix that element with another. Gain a composition impulse feat that includes your kinetic element. Use that impulse feat even though you can't channel all its elements. The feat's level must be lower than the level at which you selected elemental overlap. You can select this feat more than once, choosing a different impulse each time. Yeah, that's pretty cool too. Purify elements. You turn an element into its purest form. Choose one of your kinetic elements and target up to 1 foot cube of that element within 30 feet. 1 cubic foot of liquid is roughly 8 gallons. You remove toxins and pollutants from that element, as well as anything intruding into that element, such as plant roots from the soil. You can't change the grade of a material, alter the form of a manufactured object, or change the structural integrity of the element. Purification would remove an alchemical or magical pollutant, such as a poison or curse, Purify Element attempts to counteract that impurity using your class DC minus 10 for the counteract check. If it fails to counteract a particular impunity, any further attempts to counteract that impunity by Purify Elements fails as well. Okay, so essentially, this is like if you're a water kineticist, you can purify water. That's okay. Not great. Aura shaping. This is the fate I was waiting for. You can control the size of your kinetic aura. You can make it a 5-foot emanation to a 20-foot emanation. You must choose a multiple of 5, obviously. You can choose the size when you channel elements. You can change it when you use a stance impulse that affects your kinetic aura. Increase the maximum size you can choose by 5 feet at 15th and 20th levels. So at 20th level, this can be, your kinetic aura can be a 30-foot emanation. That's nuts. Yeah. That is freaking nuts. Chain infusion. Okay, let's take a look here. The elemental matter in your blast keeps reconstituting itself to travel onward, no matter how many bodies it collides with. Your next action is an elemental blast, and it hits. Attempt a new ranged elemental blast from the target against a creature that's within the blast range, measuring from the creature you hit. You can keep chaining the blast in this way each time you hit. Your multiple attack penalty applies normally to any blast in the chain after the first. You can make up to 5 blasts in total, but you can't target the same creature more than once. Roll the damage once and apply it to each creature you hit. If you started with a melee blast, you can still add your strength modifier only to that blast, not the successive ranged blast. This is pretty cool too, because if you crit on any of these, you get that effect. So too bad that the multiple attack penalty does apply normally to these, but if like they're all in, if there's like a bunch of enemies together, this is fantastic. Especially if they're all weak to your elements. Elemental transformation. Okay, exactly 1 kinetic element. Your kinetic gate is deactivated, and you use this once per day. You open the gate, rather than activating your kinetic aura, you're instead overwhelmed with transform elemental energy. You're affected by an elemental form spell with the same trait as your kinetic element. You can heighten it to any spell rank up to half your level rounded up. Huh. So now, this is, you transform into an elemental, basically. It's interesting. Yeah, I don't know too much about elemental form. I have to look that up to see if this is any good, but it is. It has the potential to be good. Depends. Everless impulse. Oh, this is like Everless concentration, but for impulses. All right. At 14th, we've got Nourishing Gate. You sustain yourself on a single drop of elemental dew or the slightest spark from the fire. You gain a +2 status bonus to saving throws against poison, sleep, and effects that would make you paralyzed. You don't need to breathe, eat, or sleep, but you must still take a full night's rest every 24 hours to be able to make your daily preparations. During this time, you remain awake and alert, but you must spend the time meditating or attuning to your kinetic gate rather than engaging in other complex activities. Each kineticist attunes in their own individual way. Interesting. Okay, so this is I don't need to eat. I can just This is the thing where you're just like I don't need to sleep, so I can be watched all the time. It's awesome. You just can't do other things, which is fine. I like that a lot. Rapid reattunement. You need reflow elements for this. You spend 10 minutes realigning your elemental connections in an elemental trance. Replace one of your impulse feats using the same process as reflow elements. If you have double reflow, you can replace 2 impulse feats instead of 1. Okay, so this lets you do it in 10 minutes instead of needing to do it during your daily prep. That's pretty, yeah, I like that a lot too. It's, if you need a specific impulse, this is a great feat to Imperious Aura. One or more stances, impulses that affect your kinetic aura. Oh, this is, okay, this is the free action I go into a stance thing. Okay. I forget what it's called, but there's feats like that for other Stance Savant. This is Stance Savant for stance impulses, basically. Okay. Elemental Apophis. Need Nourishing Gate and need a primary gate. Okay. You take on an elemental continence, appearing like a type of element of your elemental of your element. You gain any speeds listed in elemental form for your element and gain dark vision if you don't already have it. You also gain the elemental trait and the trait of your chosen element. Okay, so this is basically if you don't want to use elemental transformation, but you need like dark vision or something, then this is the feat to take. Kinetic Pinnacle. These are the 20th level one. You're permanently quickened, and you can use your extra action, only to channel elements. Use it one action elemental blast or one action stance impulse. Okay. Omnikinesis. You need reflow elements. You can realign your kinetic gate with a thought. Place one of your impulses using the same process as reflow elements. You can only replace one even if you have double reflow. Oh, so this makes reflow elements a one action thing rather than a one action thing rather than just a makes it a one action thing rather than needing even 10 minutes. But you only get one even if you have double reflow. All right. Let's look at air impulses. Aerial boomerang. Blade of shearing wind races away from you in a 60-foot line. Okay, this is a 60-foot line. Each creature in the area takes 2d4 slashing damage with a basic reflex save against your class DC. In the final square of the line, a boomerang rolls in place until the end of your next turn. Any creature that ends its turn in the square has to save against the boomerang. On your next turn, you can use a single action, which has the concentrate trait, to return the boomerang to you. It returns in a line from its square to your current location with the same effect as the initial line, then the impulse ends. You must have line of effect to the boomerang and be within 60 feet of it. Huh. This isn't... This is cool, but it's just damage. Just twice. It's just damage twice. It's not great. It's not for me anyway. Air cushion. Air currents upward to slow the target's fall up to 60 feet per round. Cushion ends when the target reaches the ground and the creature takes no damage from the fall. Cushion expires if the creature doesn't reach the ground within 1 minute, but any distance it fell during that minute doesn't count for any damage the creature would have taken from the fall. You can't use air cushion again while you have one in effect. The range is 120 feet, and you can create cushions for up to 5 falling creatures with 1 reaction. Situational, but it's a good teamwork feat. It's very situational. They need to be able to. They need to be falling, which, and I mean, I guess it's good that you can hit your whole party with this, but and it's a reaction. But again, it's incredibly situational. Need to see if anybody's here. Okay. We've got 4 wins. You repel up to 4 creatures for 2 actions. Target up to 4 willing creatures within 30 feet of you. Each of those creatures can stride up to half its speed, or if it has a fly speed, it can fly up to half its fly speed. The targets move up to full speed instead of half. I like this impulse a lot. This essentially means you can move your entire party. This means that in some situations, your party doesn't even have to. Those of you that are, this means you can get your melee people. This means you can get your melee people up and your spellcasters away without them needing to even spend an action. That's nuts. Yeah. Whisper on the Wind. I definitely take that one for an air kineticist. Whisper on the Wind. You speak in a whisper, a soft cloud carrying your words far away. This is the message spell with a range of 500 feet, and it can only target creatures surrounded by air. If you start your message with the target's name, you and the target don't need to be able to see each other, nor do you need line of effects. And at 4th, it's 1 mile. And at 14th, it's planetary plus the plane of air. Which is, yeah. So this is a good, this is 100% a good out of combat one. You can essentially cast message at planetary level. And you don't even need to see each other or have line of effect, as long as you know the target's name. This is actually a lot more nuts than you would think it would be. Okay, 4th level impulses. Air Shroud. Okay, this is a stance. Did I run into any stances so far? And impulses? No, and no. Okay, this is the first stance. This doesn't displace other matter, but provides air for creatures in your kinetic aura that need air to breathe. Attacks with ranged weapons take a -1 circumstance penalty to their attack rolls if they're pass through your kinetic aura. Air in your kinetic aura is difficult terrain for flying creatures other than yourself. I can see this being good for. I can see this being good for not only a protective air kineticist, but also a ranged one. Especially with that feat that can make your kinetic aura a 30-foot emanation. Alright, let's look at Lightning Dash. For an instant, you transform yourself into a being of pure lightning and fly forward, shocking anyone in your way. You propel yourself in a 30-foot line. You can move through creatures during the movement, and this movement doesn't trigger reactions that are triggered by movement. Each creature you move through takes 2d12 electricity damage with a basic reflex. You can return to your normal form in the final square of the line. If you're in the air, you fall unless you have a fly speed. Okay, again, this is just damage. This is just... I hit a bunch of people for damage. It's not... Those of you that have been with me for... Those of you that have been subscribed to the channel for a good long while are not... know how I feel about things that just do damage. It's not that I hate those types of feats. They are necessary, but I would rather have a feat that does damage and allows you to do something else for your team. And Lightning Dash does have the overflow trait, which means once you use this, you do have to rechannel your element, which is fine. Yeah. It is turning into a lightning bolt and hitting all enemies in a 30-foot line, which is cool, but I just don't think I'm ever going to take this. Not for an air kineticist. I'd much rather have the air shroud if I'm going to take a 4th level feat. 6th level, clear as air. Contract layers of air diffract and bend around your body, making you appear clear as the sky on a perfect day. You become invisible until the end of your next turn. You can sustain the impulse. If you use a hostile action, the impulse ends after that action is completed. If you activate your kinetic aura, and the impulse conceals its elements, though any special effects of your aura might give away your location. This impulse weakens if you use it too frequently. Using it again within 10 minutes makes you concealed instead of invisible. And at 10th, it's greater invisibility. Well, actually, it's not greater impulse, greater invisibility, because if you're invisible, you become concealed instead of invisible until the start of your next turn. And 16th is when it's greater invisibility. This could be cool. I'm just not sure how you use this to help the team. I mean, I guess you would use it in any way that you would use invisibility. And this is overflow. Okay, so... But you can sustain it. Okay, so even if your kinetic aura ends, then you can still sustain it. Okay. Yeah, this is just straight up. At 16th, this is straight up permanent invisibility, if you think about it. Which is crazy. But you do have to spend an action on your turn to sustain it. Flinging Updraft. Okay, this one is not an overflow. A speeding wind heeds your call, picking someone up and depositing them nearby. Choose a creature within 60 feet of you. The target jumps in any direction up to a maximum of 30 feet. If the target doesn't land on a space of solid ground within 30 feet of where it started, it falls unless it has a fly speed. But it doesn't take any damage from the fall. You can choose the distance and direction of the jump. If you target an unwilling creature, it attempts a reflex save against your class DC with the following results. The creature is unaffected. If on a failure, you make a creature jump up to half the maximum distance. And a critical failure, you make the creature jump up to the maximum distance. And every 2 levels, it increases by 15 feet. This is actually pretty cool as well, because you can definitely use this on enemies. Like, let's say there's like this archer that is up in the trees, and nobody has ranged attacks for some reason. And we don't, yeah, and you know where it is, but maybe the enemy, your allies don't. You can be like, now you're on the ground, bitch. What are you going to do? And you can also use this to make, you can also use this on your allies' turn to get them closer without them having to spend oh my God, this is so good. I love this a lot. I love this a lot. This is fantastic. I'm sorry I squared there. I normally don't, but yeah. Anyway, let's move on to 8th level air feats. For 2 actions, you gain a fly speed equal to your land speed or 30 feet, whichever is greater, for 10 minutes. Unlike a normal fly speed, you can move upward without treating it as difficult terrain. In addition, you can remain in the air at the end of your turn if you used an air impulse that turn, even if you didn't use a fly action that turn. Oh, wow. And at 14th, you can choose 5 additional creatures. They don't gain any other benefits, though. But this is fly for your entire party at level 14. That is fantastic. I mean, sure, it's only for 10 minutes, but still. I mean, it's crazy how there's a reason if I can take fly feats, I do. Flying is just so overpowered. That's why it's so high up. That's why those feats are normally so high up. And for this to be at level 8 for just you is fantastic. And then at 14th, your entire party gets to fly for 10 minutes. Dope. Moving on. Storm Spiral. Okay, this is an overflow. You create a storm. It appears in a 20-foot burst with a 60-foot line. Each creature in the area takes 3d12 electricity damage and 1d10 sonic damage with a basic reflex against your class DC. A creature that fails its save is deafened until the end of its next turn or 1 minute on a critical failure. A creature wearing metal armor or made of metal takes a -1 penalty on its save. Okay, The deafened is okay. Deafened isn't a great condition unless you're going up against spellcasters. But at least this is something that does damage and can inflict a condition if they fail their save. So overall, I'd say this one is the best overflow I've seen so far. Let's move on to 12th level with Ghosts in the Storm. Fast-moving gray clouds surround you, as well as your allies while they're in your kinetic aura. Anyone surrounded by these clouds gets a +2 circumstance bonus to saves, to reflex saves and acrobatics checks. While an affected creature uses a move action, clouds dance around it. Until the start of its next turn, it's concealed, and it strikes gain the shock rune. This is another fantastic one. This is one action for a stance. This is the best stance I've seen so far. Especially if you can make your kinetic aura a 30-foot emanation. Do you realize how big a 30-foot emanation is? It's nuts. Wiles on the Wind. Okay, this is a illusion thing. You create an auditory illusion that comes from the square within 500 feet and can be as loud as 4 normal humans talking. The sound can be intricate, including speech or music, though the GM might require you to attempt a check or know a language for it to be convincing. The illusion lasts until the end of your next turn, and you can sustain the impulse. You can have any creature within 40 feet of the illusion or that comes within 40 feet of it during its duration attempt a will save against your class DC. This is a mental effect. On a success, they disbelieve and are immune for 1 hour. On a failure, they're fascinated with the source of the sound until the end of its next turn. When the fascination ends, the creature is temporarily immune for 1 hour. And a critical failure as failure, but the creature disbelieves and is fascinated for 1 minute or until it disbelieves. Okay. So this one is great for sneaking around. Yeah. This definitely isn't a combat thing. This is 100% a let's sneak past the enemy thing, which is pretty nice, actually. This is basically Ghost Sound on a completely different level. Moving on to 14, we have Body of Air. It's a reaction or 2 actions. And the trigger is an enemy you observe targets you with an attack or other damaging effect. Your gathered air consumes your body, leaving only a cloud of living vapor. This has the same effects of you as vapor form, which is the new name for gaseous form. The effect lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain the form for up to 5 minutes. If you activate your kinetic aura, the body of air ends. Okay, so this is an impulse. But if you reactivate your kinetic aura, then it just ends. Okay. You can use Body of Air as a reaction only when the trigger is met, but you can use it as a 2-action activity without the trigger being met. Okay. And the resistance increases by 1 for every level you have. Which is, again, this is gaseous form on a completely different level. Which is, I've never seen anybody use gaseous form, or I guess now it's called vapor form, to help the team. Not really. But, I mean, it's okay. Level 18 air impulses. This is a stance. Okay. Crowned in Tempest Fury. You become one with Devastating Thunderstorm. And you gain the following effects, I'm guessing. Any creature that enters your kinetic aura or ends its turn there takes 2d12 electricity damage. If you don't have a fly speed, you gain a fly speed of 20 feet. If you have the cyclonic impulse, if you have the cyclonic ascent impulse, you instead gain that fly speed and the extra benefits. Okay, that's the 8th level thing. Okay. You gain a 10-foot status bonus to all your speeds, and your air elemental burst deal an additional 1d12 electricity damage. Okay. And this is as long as you're in the stance, which is pretty nice, actually. Yeah. I mean, all this only affects you, but it's still pretty good. Yeah. I have to admit, being able to, if you can keep enemies in that aura, in your 30-foot emanation aura, kinetic aura, then the first one is freaking amazing. Yeah. If you can like grapple them or something and keep them in there, that's amazing. And the fly speed is pretty good, as well as the bonus to speed. Elemental Blast dealing an additional 1d12 is okay. Infinite Expanse of Bluest Heaven. This is another overflow. It's an illusion thing as well. An illusion of a limitless expanse within an impossibly blue sky makes all feel the sense of falling forever. The vision appears in a 20-foot burst within 100 feet. The illusion lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it up to 1 minute. Using this impulse again ends any previous one. Each creature in the area or that later enters it must attempt a will save against your class DC. Creatures in the air are immune. Any effect of the illusion ends for a creature as soon as it leaves the illusion's area or the impulse ends. And the creature becomes temporarily immune for 1 hour. On a critical success, nothing happens. On a success, they're off guard, which is the new name for flat-footed. On a failure, they're off guard. And they're fleeing from the illusory sky, but also disoriented. Anytime it uses an action to attempt to flee, it must succeed on a DC 11 flat check or flee into a space that's still within the illusion. The GM determines where the creature ends up, but the creature can't stay stationary if it's able to move. Okay, and critical fail. There's no critical failure effect, so it's just okay. So this is basically an illusion. This is insane. Actually, I can definitely tell why this is an impulse, an overflow. Absolutely, because I mean, it's like you're basically, especially against enemies with low will saves, it's like basically taking them completely out of the fight. I completely understand why this is an 18th level feat and why it's overflow. This is downright broken. It's a 20-foot burst, which means you can hit multiple enemies with this. This is downright broken. All right, I think it's time to cover the Earth impulses. First up, we have armor in Earth. Stone encases you like armor. The stone armor is medium armor, but uses your highest armor proficiency. The stone statistics are AC bonus +4, Dex cap +1, Dex penalty -2, Speed penalty -10, Strength 16, Bulk 1, Group plate. You gain its armor specialization effect. Any bonuses, runes, and magical abilities of your actual armor are suppressed, but any runes that could apply to the stone armor are replicated on it. Stone armor lasts for 10 minutes, and you can dismiss this impulse. If you use this impulse again, any existing one ends. And at level 3, it becomes heavy armor, and its C bonus becomes 5, and it gains the bulwark trait. Okay. So this is for melee Earth kineticists, obviously. Geologic attunement. You gain tremor sense imprecise in your kinetic aura. Look around. You can point out a creature you can sense with tremor sense as a free action. And at 13th, the tremor sense becomes precise. That's pretty broken, actually. I like that a lot. If you don't know, tremor sense basically lets you feel in the earth when people are coming, which means, and you can point them out as a free action. And at 13th, it becomes precise. Yeah, this is downright broken in stealth canon. This is downright broken, especially if you're in a situation where enemies want to try to sneak up on you. Don't even have to spend an action to point. Broken. Completely and wholly broken. Stepping stones. Discs of rocks point to you that you designed to make a new path. You can set them horizontally to make a path across the ground or atop a liquid, or anchor them into a vertical surface to make steps. The path can be up to 20 feet long and can extend up to 10 feet up the sides of the surface. All squares must be contiguous and within 60 feet of you. Moving across the path lets the creature ignore difficult terrain and hazardous terrain from the ground beneath it. The disc lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain the impulse. Increase the length of the path by 10 or the height of the steps by 5, increasing the maximum distance away from a square by 10 feet. This is another good one because you can use it to, if you've got someone who's built around putting up difficult terrain for your enemies, then this says, I'll let you completely ignore that. As well as any other, as well as hazards and stuff. This is really good too. I'm liking the Earth Kineticist so far. Yeah. Tremor. This is overflow. Okay. You unleash a small localized tremor in a 10-foot burst within 30 feet. Each creature in the area takes 1d8 bludgeoning damage with a basic fortitude save against your class DC. A creature that critically fails is knocked prone. Earth and stone in the area is difficult terrain until the start of your next turn. Okay, so not only does this... So, if they crit fail, they're on the ground, which is fantastic. But even if they don't, they still have 10 foot of difficult terrain to deal with. I think that's a typo. The level +2, it must be the damage increases by 1d8. That must be a typo, surely. If it's not, then that's really weird. But anyway, moving on. Next we have calcifying sand. This is another overflow, and it's a reaction. Creature damages you with an attack using an unarmed attack or a non-reach melee weapon. Your flesh gives way as you're struck, becoming coarse sand that magically turns your enemy to stone. You gain resistance equal to your level to physical damage from the triggering attack. The attacking creature must make a fortitude save against your class DC. Regardless of the result, that creature can't trigger calcifying sand for 1 hour. On a success, the creature is unaffected. If it fails, the creature is slowed 1 until the end of its next turn. And if they critically fail, they're petrified until the end of... Oh my god. So not only does this give you resistance, but if they fail or critically fail, they're losing at least 1 action on their turn. That is insane. I am loving Earth Kineticist so far. My god, this is absolutely insane. Kineticist. Okay. This is a manipulate. Permanent stone objects. It must fit. You can create a permanent stone object. It must fit within a 5-foot cube that's adjacent to you and on solid ground. And you make the object large enough to occupy these. And you can make the object large enough to occupy that square. If you create the object underneath you or another willing creature, you can cause the target to rise on top of the object. But you can't create it under an unwilling creature. The impulse has unlimited duration, but if you use this feat again, the object returns to its original location or form. You can spend 1 hour to use this feat as a exploration activity. In this case, the object is permanent and non-magical. The object can't include any intricate or parts or moving parts. You can have the crafting skill check as part of using this impulse to add details to your creation, such as a symbol, a short message, or a pattern, with DCs determined by the GM. You can add an additional 5-foot cube to the object. Each cube must be contiguous. Again, this is a non... This isn't a combat thing. This is... Oh, I need a stone block? Okay, I can do that. I really don't know why it's 2 actions, but yeah. I guess you can trap an enemy in between blocks at high levels. That'd be pretty nice, actually. But you would have to spend multiple turns doing that. That's the problem. Because it does take 2 actions. I'm not sure how you could use this in combat, actually, but I'm sure there's a way. You guys are going to have to let me know. But anyway, Sand Snatcher. A figure of sand with grasping arms arises in an unoccupied square within 30 feet. You can choose to make it small or medium size, and it can flank. When the sand snatcher appears, you can have it attempt to grapple one creature adjacent to it that's no more than one size larger than it. The grapple uses your impulse attack roll instead of an athletics check and shares your multiple attack penalty. The sand snatcher lasts until the end of your next turn, and you can sustain the impulse up to 1 minute. Each time you sustain the impulse, you can have the sand snatcher either grapple again or use its burrow, climb, stride, or stride up to 20 feet. Attempts to escape its grasp, use your class DC. At 10th, you can make it large, and at 14th, you can make it large or huge. This is handy. This is for those Earth Kineticists that aren't melee, but want to grab people. Yeah, this is good. I like this a lot. Not only can this thing flank, but it can grapple people. Yeah, this is really good. I am loving the Earth Kineticist so far. Weight of stone. A packed cloud of thundering boulders descends from the sky, beating down everyone in its path. This is overflow. Okay. The rain of stone falls in a cylinder 20 feet in diameter and 80 feet high, and the bottom must be within 120 feet of you. Each creature in the area takes 4d8 bludgeoning damage and might be pushed downward depending on its reflex save against your class DC. On critical success, as usual, nothing happens. On a success, they take half damage. On a failure, they take full damage and are pushed down 40 feet without taking fall damage. If it reaches the bottom of the cylinder on the ground, the push ends. If the creature is pushed to the ground, it can't fly or levitate or otherwise leave the ground for 1 round. As failure, but double the damage, and the creature is pushed 80 feet on a critical failure. And the damage increases by 1d8 for every 2 levels. So, it sounds to me like this is for when you've got flying creatures. When you've got flying creatures all in an area, you can just push them down so that everybody can take it, which is good. It's decent anyway. It's situational, but it's decent. The problem is they don't take the fall damage. That's the problem. But at least they can't move on. But you are spending 3 actions on this, and it is a overflow, which means you are getting rid of your kinetic aura. Yeah, which means you do have to. Anyway, this is spiked skin. You touch a willing creature, causing its skin to harden and form spiking protrusions. The target gains resistance 4 to all physical damage except adamantine. Whether a creature damages the target with an unarmed attack or a non-reach melee weapon, it can take 2 piercing damage. This impulse lasts for 10 minutes. But each time the target takes physical damage, the duration decreases by 1 minute. The target is temporarily immune to this impulse for 1 hour. If you use any spiked skin again, any previous one ends. And the resistance and damage increases by 2 for every 2 levels. This is good. This is a really good teamwork option too, because you can use it on anyone. I mean, they got to be willing, but you can use it on any of your allies, which is fantastic. Again, I like this a lot. Swim through the earth. The earth parts before you for 2 actions, letting you swim through it. You gain a burrow speed equal to your land speed and can immediately burrow once. You don't gain the ability to breathe while in the earth, so you must hold your breath. The impulse ends at the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it for up to 1 minute. If you're inside the earth when the impulse ends, you immediately return to the surface directly above you, fall prone when you reach the surface, and are slowed 1 until the end of your next turn. Okay. You can burrow through rock and similar dense earth and material, leaving no tunnels or sign of your passing. Okay. This is a pretty good way to sneak up on foes. Yeah. You do have to hold your breath, though, but at least you can sustain it for up to 1 minute. This is again, pretty good. Yeah. Rattle the earth for 2 actions, and this is overflow. Okay. You cause an earthquake with the effects of the earthquake spell, but comes from you with an area of a 60-foot cone or emanation with the same size as... Oh, okay. It's a 60-foot cone or an emanation the same size as your kinetic aura. You and your space are unaffected by the quake. Fissures are only 10 feet deep, and the DC for the flat check for a collapse is 4 higher. The fissures are 20 feet deep, and the DC of the flat check is 2 higher at 16th. And the fissures and flat check are unchanged from the spell at 20th. Oh, okay. So it makes it easier to get around it at lower levels, but it's still an earthquake spell, and that's fantastic. Rock ramparts. Again, overflow. Okay. You form a wall of rock and earth. This has the effects of wall of stone, but the wall's maximum length is 40 feet. The wall lasts up to the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it for up to 1 minute. The maximum length of the wall increases by 10 feet, and the hit points of each section increase by 5. And that's every 4 levels. So 16th and 20th. So that means this can be a 60-foot wall at level 20. All right. Let's move on to 14th. Assume Earth's mantle. Enormous pieces of rock cluster around your body. You can dismiss this impulse. You become large if you were smaller. This increases your reach by 5 feet, or by 10 feet if you started out as tiny. You gain a climb speed equal to your land speed, but you can use it only to climb surfaces of earth and matter. The armor grants you a +1 circumstance bonus to your fortitude saves and a +2 circumstance bonus to your fortitude or reflex DCs against attempts to shove, trip you, or knock you prone. If your strength is below +4, this armor raises your strength to +4. If your strength is +4 or higher, this armor grants you a +1 item bonus to your strength. If you have the armor in Earth Impulse, you can add its effects to Assume Earth Mantle. Okay. So again, this is for melee Kineticists, 100%. Moving on to 18th, we have Rebirth in Living Stone. This is an overflow, okay. Even though the second word is overflows, it's a stance. You gain 40 temporary hit points. You're immune to critical hits and precision damage. You can't be pushed, pulled, or tripped while you're standing on earth or stone. Your Earth Elemental Blasts deal an additional 1d10 damage of their normal type. These benefits last until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain them for up to 1 minute. After gaining the temporary hit points from this impulse, you can't do so again for 10 minutes. At 20, that's 50. Wow. That's quite a lot of temporary hit points, I have to admit. And you're immune to critical hits and precision damage. This is the ultimate rock armor feats right here. Yeah, this is the you're not getting past me thing. The Shattered Mountain weeps. Okay. This is Overflow. A massive sphere of rock explodes, causing a cataclysm of falling debris and deadly shrapnel. Its destruction falls in a 20-foot burst within 120 feet. Creatures in the area take 9d10 bludgeoning damage with a basic fortitude save against your class DC. Those who fail are knocked prone, which is awesome. For the next minute, rocks continue to fall, making the area difficult terrain and dealing 3d10 bludgeoning damage to any creature that ends its turn in the area. If you use this impulse again, any previous one ends. And at 20th, the initial damage is 10d10 and the area damage is 4d10. Okay, this is pretty good. I mean, most of it is just damage, but if they fail, they are knocked prone, which is amazing. And the area is difficult terrain, and it's a 20-foot burst within 120 feet. That's honestly pretty nice. I can see why this is a 18th level feat right here. Yes, 100%. Moving on, we've got Fire. This is the one that I think is going to be the most damage focused, which unfortunately means that it's going to probably not be my favorite, but we'll see. First, we've got Burning Jet. A condensed burst of flame shoots behind you, propelling you forward with sheer force. Stride up to 40 feet in a straight line. Moving from this impulse ignores difficult terrain and doesn't trigger reactions. Okay. This is a good way for you to get out of difficult terrain and move without triggering reactions. Yeah. And it's 60 feet, and you can leap 40 feet in any direction instead of striding. If you're in the air at the end of the leap, you fall normally. Okay. And at 10th, it's you hover briefly after leaping into the air. If you leap, you don't fall at the end of your next turn. If you use Burning Jet again on the subsequent turn, you remain airborne. Huh. Okay, the 10th one is actually pretty good. It essentially allows the fire kineticist to fly. Is essentially what this, as long as they move every turn. As long as they use it. Okay. That's actually a lot better than I thought it would be. Eternal Torch. You open a connection to your kinetic gate large enough for a torch flame to flow. You create a magical torch-like flame within 120 feet of any color you choose. It's as bright and hot as a torch. You can have it orbit a target willing creature or emit from a target object that's unattended or attended by a willing creature. If you create flame on a weapon, you still need to use it as an improvised weapon to attack with the flame, just as with the torch. The flame has an unlimited duration. You can have a maximum number of eternal torches equal to your Constitution modifier, and you can dismiss each torch individually. All your torches, even the ones you already created, shed bright light up to 60-foot radius. And a dim light for the next 60 feet. This is good for parties that have people without dark vision. This is just basically, here we go. Don't even need an eternal torch anymore. Okay, this is turning out to be less about damage than I thought it was, but let's see here. Yes, we have Flying Flame. Haven't seen an overflow for Fire Kineticist yet. A tiny shape of flame appears, taking the form of your choice. It flies from you up to 30 feet in a path you choose. Each creature it passes through deals 1d6 fire damage with a basic reflex save against your class DC. And a creature only attempts one save, even if the flame passes through it multiple times. Okay, this is, and the damage increases by 1d6 for every 2 levels. This is what I thought that flame was going to be like. A bunch of stuff like this. Scorching Column. This is overflow. This takes 3 actions. Okay. With an upward gesture, you shape a vertical column of extreme heat. The cylinder is 10 feet in diameter and 30 feet high, and the bottom must be within 60 feet of you. Each creature in the area takes 1d6 fire damage with a basic reflex save against class DC. The flame remains briefly, making all squares in the column hazardous terrain until the end of your next turn, and you can sustain the impulse for up to 1 minute. A creature that takes 1 fire damage each time it moves into one of those squares. Okay, it's decent. It is hazardous terrain, so it's a good way to force them to move, but level +3, it increases by 1d6, and the hazardous terrain damage increases by 2. Okay, level 4, Blazing Wave. Flames flow out of you in a cascade, engulfing everyone in a 30-foot cone. Each creature in the area takes 4d6 fire damage with a basic reflex save against your class DC. A creature that critically fails its save is knocked prone. And the damage increases by 1d6 for every 2 levels. Again, it's damage, and they have to critically fail their save to be knocked prone, which isn't going to happen too often, actually. Yeah. So, I mean, it's very good against creatures with low reflex saves, but other than that, it's pretty situational. Well, it's not situational, but it's just damage most of the time. Thermal Nimbus. Choose cold or fire. You and allies in your kinetic aura gain resistance equal to your level to damage of that type. Any creature that starts its turn in your kinetic aura or moves into your aura during its turn takes damage equal to half your level of the chosen type. Elemental resistance from a gate junction is cumulative with resistance from Thermal Nimbus. Huh. So basically this is just if you're near me, you're going to take damage from my allies' aren't. That's pretty cool. I do like that stance a lot. This is turning out to be better than I thought. At 6th level, we have Crawling Fire. You mimic the motions of a beast of your devising, and it becomes real, a flaming pelt with a flaming searing cloth. It is small and appears in an unoccupied space within 30 feet. You can sense from the crawling fire space as well as your own using your senses. When you use a fire impulse, you can have it originate from the crawling fire instead of you, with the exception of impulses that affect your kinetic aura. The creature lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it for up to 1 minute. Each time you sustain it, you can have the crawling fire stride up to 40 feet. The crawling fire can be attacked. It uses statistics for defense, your statistics for defenses, but is immune to fire. Obviously. Any damage that would be dealt to the crawling fire is dealt to you instead, though you take damage only once from any ability that includes both you and the creation in its area of effect. If you use crawling fire again, the previous one ends. The fire can be small or medium at ace. At 10th, it can be small, medium, or large. And at 14th, it can be small, medium, large, or huge. Okay. So this is for ranged. This is for ranged kineticists. Although it isn't great for them because you're the one that takes the damage from. So you might as well. Nah. But then it can also flank with allies. And when you use a fire impulse, and it allows you to use fire impulses from 2 different locations. Okay, yeah, this is pretty good. I like that a lot. Mm-hmm. Volcanic Escape. Is this overflow? No, it is not. But you can only have one at a time, so it might as well be overflow. Okay. Volcanic Escape. This is an overflow. It's a reaction when an enemy in your kinetic aura damages you. Lava reflexively explodes underneath you and the creature that hurt you. The triggering enemy takes 1d6 fire damage with a basic reflex against class DC. You leap up to half your speed in any direction, and this doesn't trigger reactions. This is fantastic for ranged fire kineticists. Because it not only deals damage to the enemy, but it also lets you get out of sticky situations. I like this too. At 8th level, we have Kindle Inner Flames. You shed faint glowing embers, as do your allies, while they're in your kinetic aura. Anyone shedding these embers gains a +1 status bonus to reflex saves and acrobatics check, and can step as a free action once per round. When an affected creature takes a move action, its strikes deal 2 extra fire damage until the start of its turn. Until the end of its turn, sorry. The status bonus to reflex saves and acrobatics checks is +2, and the strikes gain the flaming rune instead of the extra 2 fire damage. Okay. Again, this is a stance. Yeah, this is good too. I like this a lot. Fire is actually pretty common as a weakness, so yeah. This allows your allies to do extra damage as well. So this is definitely good, especially if you got that feat that makes your kinetic aura up to a 30-foot emanation. Solar Detonation. This is overflow. Okay. Binding flames explode in a swirling sphere. The detonation feels a 20-foot burst within 60 feet of you. Each creature in the area takes 66 fire damage plus 66 vitality damage if it has void healing, and can become dazzled or blinded depending on its reflex save. The light from solar detonation is sunlight for creatures with particular vulnerability to sunlight. Each creature that attempts to save becomes temporarily immune to being blinded or dazzled by solar detonation for 10 minutes, but not the impulse's other effects. On a critical success, nothing happens. Success, the creature takes half damage and is dazzled until the start of your next turn. On a failure, they take full damage and are blinded until the start of your next turn. And on a critical failure, they take double damage and are blinded for 1 minute. Okay. All right. This is pretty good too. This especially works well on undead. I would guess that's what this is for. If you're in an undead campaign, you definitely want to pick this up. And it's pretty good even if you're not going up against undead. And every 2 levels, you increase the basic, both types of damage by 1d6. Architect of Flame at 12th. You create a wall of fire. In addition to the normal choices, you can make the wall up to 10 feet long and 60 feet high. The wall lasts until the end of the next turn, but can sustain it for 1 minute. And the damage increases by 1d6 for every 3 levels you have. Okay. Every 3 levels past 12. Furnace form. Opening your kinetic gate, you allow flames to consume your form. You gain the benefits of the fiery body spell, except the ability to cast ignition, until the end of your next turn. You can sustain the impulse for up to 1 minute, and when you do, you can fly up to half your fly speed. Your fire elemental blasts deal an additional die of damage. Okay. I'm not sure exactly how fiery body works, but I'm guessing it gives you some resistance and stuff like that. This is okay. And I'm guessing it also gives you a fly speed, which is always good. So yeah, this one is pretty good. I like it too. At level 16, its duration is 1 minute, and but you can't sustain the impulse, and you can dismiss it though. Walk through conflagration. This is overflow. Okay. You instantly transport yourself and any items you're wearing and holding from your current space to a clear space within 120 feet that you can observe that's adjacent to an open flame or a creature taking persistent fire damage. If this would bring another creature with you, even if you're carrying it, okay, yeah. The whorl of fire surrounds you in a 5-foot emanation either before you depart or after you arrive. Each creature in the area takes 4d6 fire damage with a basic reflex save against class DC. Okay, so this is a teleportation thing. And they take damage. So it's good. It's not bad. It's not particularly good for teamwork though, but it's a good way to get out of sticky situations. And well, actually, this is probably more for melee fire kineticists. I think it can teleport right to an enemy that's taking persistent fire damage, and then just deal 4d6 fire damage. Yeah. All shall end in flames. White hot fire consumes everything in a cataclysmic sphere of death. The fire fills your choice of a 30-foot burst within 500 feet or a 30-foot emanation. This deals 13d6 fire damage with a basic reflex save against your class DC. Any creature dropped to 0 hit points by this fire dies, reduced to a fire of ash. If you die to this impulse, you return to life at the start of your next turn in the same space. When you return, you have hit points equal to double your level. And at 20, the damage is 15d6 rather than 13d6. Okay, so this is essentially a last resort type thing. Well, at least the emanation is. And at least you return to life with double your level and hit points. But you're probably going to use this more as the 30-foot burst within 500 feet. All right. Ignite the sun. This definitely sounds interesting. You create a miniature sun in a 5-foot burst within 500 feet. A creature takes 7d6 fire damage anytime it's in the miniature sun with a basic reflex against class DC. A creature can take this damage more than once per round. The sun sheds bright light in a 500-foot emanation and dim light for another 500 feet. This is sunlight for the creatures with a particular vulnerability to sunlight. The sun lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it for up to 1 minute. The first time you sustain the spell each round, you can choose to increase the size of the sun's burst by 5 feet, then make it fly up to 30 feet. The sun can move through creatures, damaging them as described above. The sun continually channels fire into you and your ally. You and each of your allies within the sun's light deal an additional 1d6 fire damage with all strikes, spells that deal fire damage, and impulses that deal fire damage, except ignite the sun itself. These aren't cumulative with multiple suns. This isn't even overflow? Oh my god. I can definitely tell why this one's level 18. Not only does this make everyone deal extra fire damage with all strikes and spells and your own impulses, but you can also make the sun fly around and hit enemies more than once. Multiple suns doesn't really do anything, but unless you're in like a huge area. But granted, this is still an amazing feat. I would definitely take this for a fire kineticist, most definitely. Moving on. Let's see metal impulses. And then I think I'm gonna quit for today because it's looking like it's gonna be pretty long, and this is looking like it's going to be pretty long. Well, actually, you know what? I think I'm going to end the stream here. So you guys can look forward to part 2 of this. You guys can look forward to part 2 of this stream, and I really hope that somebody else shows up next time for the live chat. And until next time, teamwork is vital.